There was jumbo news out of Toronto, but is it as big as they're making it out to be? It's Tuesday, and this is a hockeydebates.com podcast powered by sportsbettingdime.com. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bob Duff, joined as always by my astute colleague and co-host Kevin Allen, the Hall of Fame hockey writer. And today we're happy to welcome Mike Zeisberger from NHL.com, another veteran writer with plenty of connections and knowledge on the NHL. And here we are, as we said, this is the Hockey Debates podcast powered by sportsbettingdime.com. And as you know, they're your leading source for odds, sports news, and game predictions. If you're looking to see who's going to win the Stanley Cup, or maybe you want to know who's going to win the Hart Trophy, check out their odds. They'll give you all the info at sportsbettingdime.com. At the end of the show, we'll give you a link to get to their site so you can look them up yourself. But right now, we're going to talk hockey. And Mike, I want to start right off with, as I said in the intro, jumbo news out of Toronto. What do you make out of this Joe Thornton signing for the Leafs?
Well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me on. It's good to see such respected colleagues and longtime friends of mine that you're doing well. I hope your families are all doing well, staying healthy in these chaotic times. And but some things are the same, and you know, they make mountains out of molehills in Toronto when something happens. Imagine that. But no, I mean, the Joe Thornton, I mean, he's still a big name. I think that people have to understand what they're getting in Joe Thornton. I mean, he's 41 years old. He's certainly isn't playing at the Hall of Fame level, that much of his career has reached. And I think all three of us agree that he will be joining our illustrious co-host Kevin in the Hall of Fame one day. But you know what? The fact is, they're only paying him the minimum of $700,000. And if you use Joe Thornton properly, which means you don't want him out there too much on a 5-on-5 because, I mean, he'd be the first to tell you he doesn't have the foot speed. What he still does have is his vision on the ice. So I think he's going to be a valuable addition to the second power play. I think he's going to get, I would say probably, around 12, 13 minutes a game playing on whether it's the third or fourth line. But I think, and you know what, all three of us have known Joe for a long time. Joe Thornton is a happy-go-lucky guy. He's a leader. And I think that, he's very competitive too. I think that what he brings to the dressing room, obviously, is something that the Leafs feel that they've been lacking. Look, this team has not won a playoff series in the salary cap era. And even with Matthews and Marner and Riley and Anderson, those four guys, and Nylander, make it five, that have been the core of this team, they've yet to win any kind of series. They lost in the play-ins to Columbus. They lost the preceding 2 years to the Boston Bruins in the first round. And the year before that, they lost to the Washington Capitals. So you can have all the talent in the world that you want, but obviously, they need a collective kick in the keister, for lack of a better word. And Joe Thornton, I think, is one of those guys that brings perspective into the dressing room.
Mike, I want to change the subject a little bit, just to talk in general about what we just witnessed in the start of the free agent signing period. We watched in the playoffs and throughout the regular season, even though that was a long time ago. And again, the discussion was the speed of the game. The younger players are coming in and making it faster. And there's probably more talk about offense than we've had in years. We're always talking about offense. Saying all that, when it came time to put your money where your mouth is in the offseason, nobody wanted to pay any forwards. They'll pay goalies. They'll pay defensemen. We saw Pietrangelo get his money, and Torrey Krug got his money. Yep. But the top forwards, they didn't get the big bucks right out of the gate. What is that all about? Is the game, as much as we want to think it's faster and all about offense now, is it still just simply about defense and goaltending?
Well, I think that there's always going to be room for offense, but you saw even with Taylor Hall, he got his money, but only for 1 year.
Yeah.
Whereas on the defensive side, I just think that defensemen are so difficult to come by that teams look at it and say, you know what, let's put it this way: the game has opened up. We see, playoffs aside, goal scoring is up. So, when you look at that kind of environment, defense is more important than ever because there's so few of them that are actually above competent to play the game. So it didn't surprise me as much. Um, I think across the board, we're seeing that the value of contracts are way down. And as for the goaltenders, I mean, you look at a guy, and I know he didn't have that great a year, but Braden Holtby with his pedigree, for him to get 4.3 million a year, I mean, I think all three of us would have thought that, pre-COVID, Braden Holtby would have got more money than that. So I think we saw it a little bit in goaltenders as well. As much as I think that, Calgary needed Jacob Markstrom, and that's a good deal. I mean, a 6-year deal for a goalie these days, I just, after what happened with Bobrovsky in Florida last year, I think that the team should be wary about paying goaltenders a lot. And obviously in Vancouver, I never thought that re-signing Markstrom was the best thing anyways, because they have Thatcher Demko there. They're going to have to pay guys like Pettersson and guys like Hughes in the next couple of years. So you can't blow all your money on a goaltender. So I think they did it right. But, as far as forwards are concerned, I think that maybe when the climate gets a little better, and hopefully we get back to regular hockey again and regular society again, I think the forwards will get their money. But right now, I do think there's a priority on the back end, and rightly so.
And you can see that even with a team like the Red Wings, what their priority, they need everything, let's be honest, but they priority to get puck moving defensemen, because really that's where it all starts. If you can't get the puck out of your own end, you're doomed.
And you bring up the Red Wings, and I know a lot of people looked at the Thomas Greiss signing and said, oh, that's a really good signing. Maybe it's a little, maybe they overspent a little bit. But in the case of the Red Wings, they needed a steadying influence in goal. They had the cap room, so I have no issues with the Red Wings going for Thomas Greiss. I thought he was one of the more underrated goaltenders that went on the market, and I thought it was a good deal.
Yeah, Mike, you've been around a long time, and if you're looking at the Boston Bruins like I am, do you have any idea what the game plan is there? I mean, obviously, Krug was an excellent defenseman, and we heard they wanted to get bigger, but they haven't re-signed Zdeno Chara yet, even though it's pretty clear he'd like to come back there. They haven't re-signed Jake DeBrusk yet. We hear rumors they're going to trade them. What exactly, in your mind, is the Boston game plan there?
No, you know what, Kevin, I'm a little, scratching my head a little bit about what the Bruins game plan is as well. I understand with the Chara thing, and if Krug is going to leave, you would have thought that they would have looked at somebody to at least step in, maybe not for that ticket, but, a TJ Brody type of guy, maybe that would have been a little more economical, but they didn't choose to do that. And the other thing that concerns me about the Bruins is that where does the secondary scoring come after the big line? We know a couple of them. Every member of that big line, whether it be Bergeron, whether it be Pasternak, or obviously Marchand, they're all banged up. A couple of those guys aren't going to be ready if the season were to start in January or February. So, and David Krejci's getting older as well. So you're talking about a lot of offense coming from 30-plus-year-old guys that are banged up. And I really thought that if they we know they made a run at Taylor Hall. I would have thought that they might have made a run at Toffoli. We keep hearing rumors about Hoffman. I don't know about that, but I would have thought they would have gone for a couple guys like that, because really, I don't see the Boston Bruins from a talent point of view having as much on the roster as they have in previous years. And let's face it, guys, this is a team that is getting old. And let's not even talk about what's going on in goal, because we saw that Halak is not the answer. He's a good backup. But how long does Tuukka Rask have left? So I think there's more questions than answers coming out of Boston right now.
Well, another Atlantic Division team that there's a lot of buzz about after the playoffs and then what they've done in the offseason is the Montreal Canadiens. And it's kind of, as a longtime hockey fan, it's nice that there is a buzz about the Canadiens, because there hasn't been for quite a while. But do you think they've improved as much as some people seem to believe they have?
I think that they have improved. Look, guys, for me, for most of the Carey Price era, and especially the last 3 or 4 years, when I look at the Montreal Canadiens, I've always just circled like they can't score. That's been their Achilles heel. And have they addressed that? Yes. Do I still think that they can keep up with some of the upper teams offensively? No, I've got my questions about that. I mean, they went. Here's an example. They went and traded for Josh Anderson, and I understand. I like the player. He plays a very, very heavy game. He's a great when he's healthy. He's a great power forward. But guys, they just gave a 7-year extension to a player who has scored 20 goals once in his career. Once. And I just wonder if the money could have been spent better. Once again, I would have liked to see the Canadiens, they got to Foley. I would have liked to see them take a run at Hoffman too, because they still have question marks as to how much this team can score. It was great to see them in the playoffs with the likes of, some of the younger players, Suzuki for sure. And I know I'm going to butcher this name, but Kakanyemi. Was I close?
Yeah.
Good. But, there's a lot of promise there, and I like their defense. Goaltending goes without question. But, I still wonder, can the Montreal Canadiens, when all is said and done, is score enough goals? And that's a part of their game, or of their roster, where I still think a little bit of improvement is needed.
Mike, I got a team that I want to get your thoughts on, because I'm struggling with it a little bit. The idea of marrying Peter Angelo with the Vegas Golden Knights on the surface is very appealing. And when I heard they were going to go after it, it made perfect sense to me. But now they've given up Nate Schmidt and Stastny in order to get that. Now, would I would have traded Stastny and Schmidt for that? Yeah, I would have. But saying all that, it doesn't seem to me that it had the same impact when you have to take away Nate Schmidt from that defense to add him. Like, if you could have added him and kept Nate Schmidt, I would have said, wow. That would have been a wow factor to that move. But I'm struggling with it a little bit, especially given how they handled the Fleury situation. They were unable to really move them. It's complicated. Now they're sitting with $13 million in goalies. Was that a good move by Vegas to do what they did?
Well, I think anytime you get a guy like Peter Angelo, you can make an argument that it wasn't a bad move. But I agree with you, Kev. I mean, I think that they were so committed to go after this guy. And I understand why. I mean, there's the player part, but there's the leadership part as well. And nobody can question that in Peter Angelo. But I think the plan all along was to open up that cap space through somehow moving Fleury, which they weren't able to do. And because of that, instead of moving the guy that, it seemed to be was going to be the backup goaltender, now you've traded away your second or third line center, and a guy that arguably after Shea Theodore would be your number 2 defenseman. So you're chiseling away at your depth a lot by getting Peter Angelo. I know you have to give away something to get something. But my question mark is, how much is the depth of Vegas going to be affected because of this? And it's going to be fascinating, because I think it all revolved around Fleury. I think in their minds, they thought somehow they would be able to move him. And when it didn't happen, all of a sudden you're paying the price in other places on the roster.
Well, I can ask you one last thing before we let you go, Mike. You talked about the Josh Anderson move. The other half of that was Max Domi leaving Montreal to go to Columbus. Now, here's a guy who's produced numbers everywhere he's been. He had an off year, granted, this year, but he's been traded twice, and he's only 25 years old. He was a first-round pick. Is there something going on, underlying thing here that makes Max Domi just not wanted on teams? It just seems weird that a guy, in an era where, goals are so important, that you can move out a guy who's a consistent 20, 25 goal scorer.
Yeah, that's a little head-scratching to me, and I know Max quite well. I mean, you guys have referenced it. This isn't my first rodeo. It isn't any of our first rodeos. We've been doing this for a long time. And therefore, I remember Max when he was a little kid whizzing around the Maple Leaf dressing room when I was covering his dad, Ty. Back in the days of Brian McCabe and Curtis Joseph with the Maple Leafs. And, I've got to know him quite well. He's a very, very, even-keeled, to me, somebody that you would want on your team. Now, the trade from Arizona, any trade that Arizona makes, I always consider to be, kind of so-so, because there, a lot of things that Arizona does are done for financial reasons. This one, when I first started hearing that they wanted to trade him, the Montreal Canadiens, that is, I was a little surprised. And all I would say to this, all the people, and there are a lot of people in Montreal Canadiens fans think they won the trade. I really like Max Domi. I like what he brings to the table, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in Columbus. This is not the one-sided trade to me that a lot of people are making it out to be.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us today, Mike. I know you're dealing with a plumbing emergency, and we've all been there, and those are no fun. It's funny when there's water spilling out on your floor, how nothing else matters but getting that water to stop. So we certainly thank you for giving us a few minutes of your busy day, and we'll love to have you back again another time, Mike.
Hey, I'd love to come back again. And listen, guys, I mean, if having a little bit of a leak in your bathroom is the worst thing that can happen to you in these chaotic times, then bring it on. Let it flow, man. Let it spray wherever it wants to spray, if that's the worst thing. But listen, I just want to say to all the people that are listening or should be listening to this podcast, you two guys are one of the best in terms of journalists and friends. Thank you very much for having me. And please be safe and healthy until we talk again.
Thanks. Love your attitude.
Yep. Have a great one, Mike. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. That's what I like about Mike. He's always positive. I mean, you get into some of those stressful moments in a Stanley Cup series where you're in overtime and you're stressed out on deadline, and Mike always would have a way of kind of easing the mood and kind of getting everybody to mellow out and not get too concerned, and remind everyone, after all, folks, it's just a hockey game.
Yeah, well, a lot of people may be stunned by this, but, it's no different than competition when you're a writer. Like, you're on deadline, they're waiting on your story, you're trying to make it, entertaining for your readers, you're feeling lots of pressure. And there are some writers who handle that better than others, and Z is one of the best at handling that. He, like you said, he always had a smile and always cracked a joke, and he was a pleasure to be around in those situations. When it sometimes can be a little hairy, to say the least.
Now, we touched a little bit on the Joe Thornton move last week, and now that it's officially happened, and I was effusive in my praise of Joe. I love the guy. I think he's a great guy, and I would love him on my team. But I'm looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs as a whole, and I'm just thinking, wouldn't they have better served their team to spend money on someone like a Craig Smith or even a Jesper Foss, somebody who could give them a little bit of sandpaper in that bottom six and can also score goals, and certainly in Smith's case, a pretty steady 20-year goal guy. and could play in your top six in a pinch if you needed him to.
Well, the issue there, though, Bob, was Joe Thornton is playing for $700,000. Like, that is the minimum salary. That is less than you could get an entry level player. Like, in other words, what I'm telling folks is you say, well, they should have brought a younger player up, but actually a younger player would have cost them more than Joe Thornton's going to cost them. And I think that was the issue. They were so capped out that you always now have to feed your payroll with 7 or 8 guys that are making under $1 million to try to, pay and allow for inclusion of the guys at the top making 11 million. And, to me, if you're going to add a guy like that, to get a guy that like Joe Thornton, who's going to be, terrific in the room, as he pointed out. And, we know how he can still pass the puck, and everybody knows how, that he's not the fastest guy in the world, but the puck still moves pretty quick when he passes it. And, to me, the other reason why it works is we're pretty sure no matter how many games they play this season, we're going to see a compressed schedule. And when there's a compressed schedule, we're going to get injuries. And, Thornton will be the kind of guy that you can move up and down your lineup. Like, he's slated to play, in the third or fourth line. Let's call him a 3.5 line mate. He's going to be in there somewhere, getting some time. I don't know that he's going to get 12 or 13 minutes. That's what Z said. To me, I'd guess to be around 10. But who knows? With the second power play, yeah, maybe it will be 12 or 13. But the point of all that is, if they had to, if there's injuries, he'll get up in that top 6. They'll play him with 2 fast guys. They'll bear most of the defensive responsibilities, and they'll be careful with them. But I still think he can help. I do, Bob. And, he's not going to be the Joe Thornton of old, but I think he's going to be valuable in terms of how he can help the young leaders on that team by just counseling them, just being in their cabinet and do all that. So I think it's a good move. I do. And, I thought you made the best argument you made last time we talked about this. And I really thought about that was, they already had Spezza, but as good as Spezza is, and he does a lot of those things that Thornton does, he's not Joe Thornton. He doesn't command the same level of respect. He has his own level of respect, but, Joe Thornton's going straight to the Hall of Fame. He's not going to pass go and collect his 200. He's just going to go right to the Hall of Fame. And just because of what a tremendous passer he's been throughout his career. So I don't think you can go wrong. And would I rather have had, a Craig Smith, but Craig Smith signed for almost $4 million a year. So, you can't trade Joe Thornton at $700,000 for a $4 million a year forward.
A team that nobody seems to be talking about at all since the free agency period began, that I think made a very shrewd move, is St. Louis. I mean, they accepted they were going to lose Peter Angelo and went out and got Torrey Krug, and that's a pretty good replacement. I mean, different type of player certainly, but St. Louis is a team that only a year removed from winning the Cup and still has pretty much, other than Peter Angelo, all the pieces in place. I just think that's a guy like Krug, who has played in a lot of big games and will fit right in, and is a guy that, we talk about how important it is to get defensemen that can move the puck and contribute to the offense, and he's certainly one of the elite guys at doing that. I really like that move for St. Louis.
I do too, but I got a large but to that, and that is this, because I like the move. I really do, and I think Krug will fit well there, and he is a better than able replacement. But if you're able to pay Torrey Krug and sign him that long, why couldn't you get Peter Angelo done? Was it that big a leap to go from, what was Krug, 6'5"? Was it that big of a leap to get into Peter Angelo? It doesn't seem to me that it would have been. You should have been able to figure that out, because I'd rather have him. I'd rather have the guy who took you to the Stanley Cup championship. That is a 6'4", two-way guy, gets very calm and poised, and that's not diminishing Krug's value because I'm bullish on him as well. But I would prefer Pierangelo, and if you could make Krug work, why couldn't you make Pierangelo work? I think Pierangelo ended up being kind of miffed at the Blues for what they were willing and weren't willing to do. And if I'm the fan base, that's the question I'm asking. Explain to me why you couldn't go that extra couple million a year. Now, saying that, it's real easy for me to be free with $10 million or whatever the difference is. But I don't know. It seems to me that was doable.
Well, you just wonder what went on behind the scenes that we don't know about, because they had, they've known this day was coming for a long time.
Right.
I wonder why both sides couldn't have found common ground. I mean, there didn't seem to ever be any real serious moment where it seemed like it was close to happening. It seemed like there was never really that, you thought this is, there was a lot of talk that he wasn't going to leave St. Louis, but there was never any concrete evidence that either side was close to agreeing to any kind of terms that would keep him there.
Well, yeah, I was from Missouri when it came to him. I show me. Like I felt till the very end he was going to resign there. Like his teammates were calling him. He loved his teammates. Like it just didn't. He's a Blue. It seems to me. I never got the sense. There's certain guys that look they're not coming back. It's not that the fit isn't right for them. They want to go back to Toronto. They want to do this. They want to get to a bigger market. They want the marketing opportunities. I never sensed that with him. I sensed he was happy in St. Louis, comfortable. His teammates liked him. He liked the role he had there. And then for some reason, it just didn't work out. And you know what? Maybe there's a logical explanation to this. Doug Armstrong's a good general manager. I think he's right up there with the top general managers in the game. Been around a long time, knows the ins and outs. So all I'm saying is I'd love for an explanation of why that couldn't work out. And for somebody to raise their hand and say, it didn't work out because of this, and maybe it was both of our faults. But and I think the fan base deserves an explanation, for that.
Well, you wonder too. Like, I remember when Curtis Joseph signed with the Red Wings when Dominik Hasek retired the first time, and I just remember watching him walk into that press conference to introduce him, and he looked like he was coming to a funeral. Like, here's a guy who was walking in, I think it was $6 million a year, and he looked sad. He looked depressed, and I think it was obvious he didn't want to leave the Maple Leafs, but for some reason the two sides got into a rift and could never mend the fence, and he left. But his performance in Detroit just seemed like he never really seemed like, not that he didn't want to be there, but it just didn't, emotionally he wasn't attached to the Red Wings like he was to the Maple Leafs. And you wonder about that with Pietrangelo. I mean, you say he was a Blue and he's been only known Blue. Is that going to be an impact on him in Vegas at all? Is he going to be a guy that, still has his heart, was it meet me in St. Louis? Maybe I left my heart in St. Louis.
Yeah, he may have left his heart in St. Louis. If I had to guess, I'll guess that it won't take long before he'll, but the Vegas team is changing in one other way too. I talked about that. There's something that bothers me about how all this was done. And like I said, logically, I'd say, it's an upgrade. Pietrangelo over Nate Schmidt. Yes, I would have traded Stastny and Nate Schmidt for Pietrangelo. Yet I'm bothered by all this because I think my expectation is he was coming there and he was going to be, if we can say this, for a guy that's making almost $9 million, a free player for Vegas. They weren't going to have to pay anything to get him. I knew they were going to have to sell up some assets, but I didn't think it would be Nate Schmidt. That's the point. And I think that sort of diminishes the excitement level of all that. And I wonder too is what makes Vegas or the Golden Knights who they were, having come onto the scene and been much better than expected, was this sort of team chemistry, depth, everybody on the oars. Let's get this all done. And now I'm looking around, and they seem to be more star oriented. We've got Stone, we've got Peter Angelo. We're trying to turn Theodore into a Norris candidate, and he's kind of stepping up. Are we losing sort of their identity a little bit? That Z hit the nail right on the head. When you get rid of Stastny and you get rid of Nate Schmidt, you're eroding the depth that had made this team pretty good. So it's going to be interesting. Now there's going to be a lot of pressure on, the top players, the Pacioretty's, the Peter Angelos, the Stones. They got to produce now all the time with great consistency.
Kind of reminds you when San Jose got Erik Karlsson, and everybody thought, oh my God, they're going to have Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns, and then you've also got Marc-Edouard Vlasic. What a defense. These guys are going to be impregnable. They're going to be great, and it just never worked. It just didn't fit. And granted, there were some injuries that played a role in that, but it just never clicked. And that's the thing about free agency. Like you talk about chemistry. Free agency is a challenge to a team's chemistry, and if you haven't got that kind of established culture, then it can upset the apple cart and can go south on you.
Yeah, the free agency can be the double to depth. If you're not careful, and sometimes it brings teams together. Some teams go and they find their chemistry through free agency. They find the guy that's going to come in and be a glue type player, but sometimes it rips it apart. And I'm wondering if that's a possibility. And let's not forget how popular Marc-Andre Fleury is on that team. And now he's on a team that doesn't really want him. And so how will that impact? How will the guys feel about that? Have they lost faith? And if Marc-Andre Fleury can go from the most popular player on the team to being a guy they didn't want, well, could that happen to me? Yeah. So there's a lot to digest there. And the big difference to me too is, I've known George McPhee a long time, going back to his playing days, to the being a GM in Washington. Real honorable guy, principled guy, and maybe Kelly McCrimmon is too. But you heard a lot of people complaining about how Kelly McCrimmon handled this. Behind the scenes, other general managers didn't like what went on. Now, I don't know whether he was not being honest in terms of what was going on or what was going on, but other GMs came away disappointed in Kelly McCrimmon. So there's that change as well. And let's go back into the season when Gerard Gallant was summarily dismissed after sort of being the champion of this team of misfits that nobody wanted, and they all came together. Well, they're not a team of misfits anymore, and Gerard Gallant's gone, and Marc-Andre Fleury will soon, at some point, be out the door, and so forth. So it's going to be interesting to watch that team.
Yeah, sometimes nothing weighs heavier than expectations, and
yes,
Vegas has those on them now, big time, with the addition of Peter Angelo. But unfortunately, speaking of time, we're out of it again. We're happy you joined us, and we'll be back again on Thursday to talk some hockey betting. And this has been the HockeyDebates.com podcast, powered by Sports Betting Dime. I'm Bob. He's Kevin. And we'll see you on